Hi, afternoon everyone. Welcome to the session. We are Treasury Technology Associates. We're very pleased to be here with you today, virtually. I'm Keith Strachan. Hello.
And I'm Dimos Dimitriadis. Hi.
Hi, and I'm David Kelin. Hello from me too. Welcome and greetings to you joining the session live and also joining on delayed viewing. Today's session is sponsored by TTA, and we're looking forward to contributions from our friends at FIS, Ion Treasury, and TreasuryXpress. The focus today will be on recent and upcoming developments in the Treasury management system space.
A quick word about TTA. We are three experienced treasury professionals, and our experience ranges from corporate clients, software vendors, and the big four consulting firms. We set up TTA to primarily help clients transform their operational capability with a focus on technology. And a large part of our work focuses on system selections and implementations. Today, we have a really interesting session. We have three leading vendors in the system space, and we're going to talk about developments in the TMS area. And we have FIS talking about developments in linking system, interfacing.
We have Ion Treasury talking about machine learning with a specific focus today on cash flow forecasting.
And we have TreasuryXpress, who are here to talk about developments in the payment space.
Before we kick off, though, some housekeeping. There is a toolbar at the bottom of your screen with a few tabs. One is the About, which gives you session information. One is Q&A, where you can pose questions, which we'll look at the end. There's another one, Polls. We'll be asking a couple of questions to discuss later. And finally, the survey one, where you will be able to fill out your reviews at the end. Throughout this session, please feel free to submit any questions in the Q&A box. We shall answer these at the end of the session. We shall also be posing 2 questions shortly, which you will see in the polls section. The session is being recorded. And it will be made available for replay on this platform shortly after the session finishes.
Now, as Keith mentioned, we have a couple of poll questions for you to ponder during the presentations and give you time to refresh your views on this. These are in the tabs below. There's the poll tab, which gives the game away. We shall give you a warning about a couple of minutes before we close the session, so you can stop voting. And then we will look at the answers at the end of the session.
So, the first question is about COVID. How has COVID affected your TMS investment plans? 5 options. There's either no effect, we're going ahead, or our plans are on hold. We've got too much other stuff going on. Our plans are on hold because budget priorities elsewhere have caused cuts. We are actually looking for researching a new system now, or we have no current plans.
Second question is also about COVID. And this question is, how has COVID highlighted systems' either strengths or weaknesses? And there are 4 options to choose. The first one is, we're sitting pretty, so we're happy, and our automated treasury management system has really helped. We've managed with limited automation, but we've had some problems. Working from home has caused us some issues in operational processes. And finally, working from home was really tough without good systems.
So those are the 2 questions. But thinking back a little bit on this year, we're up to Q4 now in 2020. Been quite a memorable year, hasn't it? But not necessarily for the right reasons.
As we've all kind of been confined in various spaces within our homes, we had the opportunity to talk to a lot of our clients and contacts. And one of the observations that we made was that with all this work being done remotely, and it actually looks like this theme is going to continue, i.e. working from home for the foreseeable future. We've seen that of those of our clients that had actually a TMS, and that TMS was linked with other systems like bank portals and GL systems, etc., have actually found it a lot easier to work, and they could justify their investment, whereas those without found it a lot harder.
We've also seen that cloud services have allowed file training in treasuries to work okay, but sharing an Excel file may share information but doesn't record who does what or when particularly well, and it's also harder with these systems to enforce controls. In fact, we've seen a really timely example of this in the UK, where Boris's team had a big slip up using Excel for the test and trace data for COVID.
We've also seen cloud services make Treasury system projects easier in some ways for working remotely and also working using webcams. Some of it's a bane of our life, but it's helped in some ways. What we've seen, especially as training sessions from vendors, are much more efficient, whereas before you might get them turning up for a whole day and you're thinking, how can I keep them busy when I've got other things to do? But you can have more sessions, and shorter sessions are more feasible, which we think uses our increasingly short attention spans better. Also, noticed another thing, that vendor consultants implementing systems have to travel a lot. They're much less stressed now, traveling less, which obviously has a help for the project as they're better engaged.
So enough about us and what our thoughts are. I think it's time to slowly introduce our guest speakers here. By the way, this is the first time that we have 3 TMS vendors in the same virtual room, and they still haven't torn each other's eye out, which is good. It's good. They've behaved themselves. We've tamed them well. So the first speaker is Sarah Becker from FIS. And she is going to talk about the integration and the connectivity between systems. Now, integration connectivity has always been part of a TMS implementation, and over the years, I think we've come a very long way from exchanging flat files, spreadsheets even sometimes, via host-to-host connectivity, all the way to the more recently obscure API situation. Now, Sarah will take us through some of the evolution of the Treasury connectivity and tell us how FIS developed solutions in this area. I'm sure Sarah will be able to explain the subtle differences between exchanging flat files and the benefits of this technology, all the way to APIs and the brave new world that we are now facing. Sarah, over to you.
Perfect. Thank you, Dimos, for this introduction, and hello, everyone. Welcome to this session. So today, as you know, I'm going to talk to you the technology innovation for the integration. So where we came from and where we are going with regard to the API technology. Okay. So the first question that we have is about evolution. And recently, we have made a survey, whereas we noticed 52% of the Treasury professional says that banking API are now important. If we look into the past, what we notice is we have fewer integration, less information, less system to integrate, and we had the traditional connectivity, such as the host-to-host or the exchange of flat file with other systems such as ERPs. Therefore, with nowadays, the world is evolving, and therefore what they need is they need to integrate with more systems. So what is key nowadays for the treasurer is that because his role has expanded, he needs to integrate all the systems together in order to have the full picture of all the information. The landscape has to be accessible. Also, what is important is that all of those risks linked to the connectivity needs to be mitigated. So the transparency of information and mitigation of risk are 2 key elements. And therefore, treasurer need reliable data in a timely fashion. So also the concept of time information is quite crucial nowadays for treasurer. And all of it have accelerated the innovation toward what we call now the API. So we have seen the evolution of the integration, but then the next question is going to be like, why the treasurer wants to have access to data? What do they expect to achieve? And therefore, we have made again that survey, and based on that survey, what we notice is 36% of the people says that the visibility into the cross-border status is key for them. That visibility will enable them in order to have a more efficient process and routing of the payment information. And they need to use this data in order to identify the best route for those payments. Equally, 47% of the people have said that security is key information, is as important as decision making. And therefore, with the emergence of new risks, especially during this pandemic, all of those risks linked to the cybersecurity makes the treasurer thinks that they need to have all of the right information on screen in order to make the right decision for their organization. So they believe security is quite crucial. So when we have data, the importance is that to extract those data and to put them into the right context. And therefore, we need to translate those data into information. That's how we're going to enhance decision making. Those data has to be relevant. So, for example, let's say that you can have like connection with some system, receivable system, where we can analyze whereas the payments, the receipt from customer are getting late. We need to translate like the profile of those customer. We need to translate it into, for example, the liquidity page of the client, so that they know when to invest the liquidity and how to make the best decision about it. Only 32% of the people surveyed say that they have completed banking API yet. So, as we have seen, this was the end of the flat file. Now we have moved toward like more the API connectivity, but so far only 32% have made it. Also, on top of that, we noticed that the connectivity not only should deliver like a banking API, but also because we look at the complete ecosystem, should also like look at ERP system and other systems such as the market data provider, such as the trading platform, such as the sanction screening, such as the advanced risk tool. And having connection with all of them towards your treasury management system will enable to gain efficiency, such as real-time processing. All of this integrated will allow, first of all, to deliver the information at the right time, to have a full visibility across the entire ecosystem. All of it has been fully integrated, and therefore you have zero manual intervention. So streamlining all of those integration will help the treasurer to make the right decision for his organization. The vision for integration is that, like today, we looked at API and robotic, and it involves like the unintended data aggregation, the web-based API integration, as well as the report data lake across the entire ecosystem. And all of it enable like binary decision making, whereas it's going to automate certain process within the treasury, such as the reconciliation, the pricing, the valuation, the accounting, the limit monitoring, for example. The machine learning is used to analyze system-wide treasury data to automate those complex decision making. And what we see now into the future is that we're going to move toward more like machine learning, whereas those will highlight data, will provide recommendation, and also manage the data ambiguity in order to help the decision making. In short, what I can say is that this evolution has brought a lot of efficiency toward the treasury, and all of this technology will help to automate, secure, and improve treasury department everywhere. Thank you.
For that, Sarah. Very interesting, especially on the security aspect, which must be quite a big step up. Now, for our next spotlight, I introduce Brian Yick from Ion Treasury. He's solution consultant and will present Ion's developments on machine learning. This is a topic which has been a topic of discussion with a lot of promise. But I think, from my view perspective, we've seen not that much tangible so far. Brian will focus today mostly on cash flow forecasting. I think this is really timely. But you would wonder, how would machine learning help when cash flows will have changed significantly this year from prior behaviors? So Brian, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. So thanks a lot for the introduction. Welcome to this particular webinar. And today I'm going to talk you through machine learning, its application, and also some of the benefits that perhaps you might see in the Treasury world. So my name is Brian Yick. I'm a solution consultant of Ion Treasury. So in Ion, we have 7 treasury management systems, as you can see on the left-hand side. So offering choice to our community of treasury users. But more importantly, we also have 5 value-added solutions, what you can see on the right-hand side here. So these 5 value-added solutions can sit on top of any of those 7 treasury management systems you see on the left. And what that really does is bring the value adds and benefits that it might have, that you can have to complement those treasury management system. And today, mainly our focus will be on machine learning and its application on the treasury management systems. So when you talk about machine learning, there's usually a few buzzwords that perhaps you hear. For example, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and deep learning, for example. But what actually are the other definitions? So just give you a quick introduction. Artificial intelligence is really just any intelligence demonstrated by the machine. And then machine learning is really just a subset of that bracket. And it's really the machine being able to learn without being explicitly programmed. So perhaps on your normal day-to-day life, you would have experienced machine learning in the context of Siri, your Google Assistant, your Amazon orders, or perhaps even your Netflix TV shows recommendations. So in Ion Treasury, we really try to leverage the same technology, try to see how we can apply the same set of methodology that have been applied to those kind of things and apply it to Treasury to benefit our Treasury users. So what are we trying to achieve here? So there are a few different things. So first, we really try to automate some of the repetitive tasks that perhaps some of the treasurers are currently experiencing. We try to unlock some of the values, helping you to enhance the controls. But most importantly, what we try to do is also to help you to gain more efficiency, helping you to save time on some of the processes, and more importantly, helping you to gain insights leveraging big data analysis, and then leveraging that as the backbone of the machine learning. So in terms of the various use cases, there are a few different things that perhaps you might think machine learning can help you tackle within the world of Treasury. So what are they? So the first priority, after talking to a lot of different customers, we have cash forecasting, which is the #1 pain point that perhaps a lot of treasurers currently now face, is that the process itself usually take a long time, it's very manual, it's not accurate. And by leveraging machine learning, we really try to leverage the ability to learn historical data, understand all the histories, the trends and patterns, any seasonality that comes along with it, and how can then use the machine learning methodology and apply it to your forecast. So that particular functionality we're going to focus on today, and it has already gone live with our treasury management system. But all the other treasury use cases are also interesting as well in terms of AI. So we have, for example, a more interesting one on payment fraud detection. So perhaps how you can recognize some of the previous behaviors that you have within your system, and then alert the users for any fraudulent activities, for any irregular payments that are happening in your system. We can also perhaps do some hedging and investment strategies as well. So in terms of your hedges or your investment that you've done in the past, how can we use AI and then recommend you with future hedges and future investments? But today our focus would really be on cash forecasting. So this is an area that we have already tackled, we have developed functionality for, and then we have pushed it out to our clients and received really good feedback in terms of how they're currently using it and what kind of pain points does it actually solve. So for a typical Treasury department, they usually find cash forecasting to be a really slow process, really manual process. The time taken for them to generate the forecast, to collect all the historical data, to analyze them, it usually takes a long time. That will lead to perhaps also missing or incorrectly identifying some of those trends or patterns that perhaps exist within your data. And ultimately, what that translates to is an over or underestimation of your cash requirements, meaning perhaps you might have saved more cash, a safety cash within your bank, and less for the investment opportunity perhaps that you might have. So as a treasurer, perhaps you already have a really good process in terms of better communication with your subsidiaries, having a really good TMS, so providing you with the capability, drilling down, having that auditability, making sure that everything is workflow controlled. So doing all of them things above, how can you actually elevate it to the next level is with the use of machine learning and artificial intelligence. So with the use of artificial intelligence and machine learning, what we can say is we can drastically reduce the time taken for you to produce a forecast. So compared to perhaps typically you might take you a day at least to compile forecasts. With the machine learning method, all you have to do is a simple click of a button and the forecast itself will be generated in a few seconds. Clearly as well, it will also help you to improve the accuracy. So with the use of our algorithm, it truly increased the accuracy of our forecast. And with one of the case study with one of our pilot customers, it has helped them to increase the accuracy from an already impressive 85% doing in the manual traditional method, and then going it up to 95%, so a 10% increase in accuracy for the cash flow forecasting. And ultimately, that translates to realizing a more monetary gain with a more predictable cash requirements, and then also helping them to tackle the forecasting pain points that we have highlighted just now as well. So giving you just a more graphical representation of how perhaps the machine learning would actually work. So at the top here, you'll be able to see a set of data. At the top, we use a set of historical data as training data, asking the machine itself to learn it, understand the trends and patterns, highlighting any seasonality. And then what we can do is then take that historical data, train it, and then validate it with a validation set of data to see how good our training model is and how good our machine learning methods actually are. So at the bottom, these are the two main machine learning methods that we have already incorporated within our treasury management system. The bottom left-hand corner, we have the ARIMA method, which is a simple statistical method, which helps the client itself to increase the accuracy of the forecast up to 93%. And on the bottom right-hand side corner, you see a neural network method, which is a deep learning method, which helps to increase the accuracy to up to 95%. So all in all, just telling you how easy it is to create a forecast and also how accurate the forecast can be with the use of machine learning. So all in all, just to recap again, what can machine learning actually bring to your organization? So first, it's really the time saving. Second is also improving the accuracy as well. Perhaps also Keith mentioned, perhaps in the world of COVID, how can we actually take into account of some recent trends or changes that happens within your organization? That's when your TMS actually comes in, and you can combine it with scenario analysis, making sure that you can flexibly flex your data to an increase or decrease depending on the latest market trend. And ultimately, that will lead to automating your businesses, freeing up some of your resources, as well as unlocking the value for getting the monetary gains that perhaps you would need. So I'll pass it back to Keith and Dimos and David. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Brian. Really interesting. I mean, there's a couple of things that I took from that. One is you gave a great, concise definition around the difference between machine learning and AI, which is really good. I've always sort of struggled with the two. I've been in this business for over 35 years, I'm ashamed to say. And always, it was quite interesting. You focused on cash forecasting, which has been a bone of contention for everybody. And I just think that we're living in really exciting times when finally maybe we can improve cash forecasting and particularly, as you mentioned, the accuracy of it with tools like machine learning and AI. And it's really interesting to see that some interesting developments are occurring in that space. So thank you for that. I just wanted to remind you that our polls are still open for another 2 minutes. So really appreciate your input into answering those two questions. So we have something really interesting to talk about at the end. But we now move on to our final speaker. We'll be talking about payments, and payments, as you know, has always been an integral part of the Treasury function. Sometimes dull, but never boring, especially when they go wrong, and we have irate beneficiaries on the phone looking for the funds. The world of payments really has changed in the last few years with the advent of real-time banking, offering instant availability of funds, instant payment confirmations, and settlement finality. We think cloud-based computing has really accelerated this progress, making it easier for treasurers to automate and optimize their payments process. Our next company, TreasuryXpress, has been at the forefront of this development for many years, and since 2007 has been offering treasuries the cloud-based solutions. I'm very happy to introduce Tom Leach, who's COO of TreasuryXpress, and he's going to talk about the payments market and how TreasuryXpress is helping their clients in today's ever-changing world. Tom, I just want to pass over to you. Thank you.
Yeah, there's always one guy who gets it wrong, and I was cracking a good joke, so I won't try that again. So, David, thank you very much for the introduction. As we mentioned, we're going to talk about payments, and especially how we actually founded just before we started it in 2007 to see how another sort of epic proportion of things going wrong has sort of come and pushed us again to the forefront. So, I think if we look at what's driven some of the transformation digitally over the last, I suppose, if you look at 13 years to where we are now, David alluded to the cloud computing and where we are. So we're actually what we call the second revolution of cloud computing, where companies of all sizes are now looking at adopting technology that is SaaS. It used to be only those who couldn't afford a server or locally hosted, to now those that have access to a computer can have a TMS. Specifically, looking at the payment operation disruptions more, let's say now, is obviously we have the open infrastructure of APIs that Sarah alluded to. Some banks are creating extremely good APIs. What I mean by that is making it easy for us as vendors to connect to. Other technologies are making it slightly difficult, but we are seeing more and more customers request this. I think actually if you look at the segment of clients from our perspective, as I can speak with more authority to that, it's actually the smaller customers that have taken quicker advantage to it. So almost every project, let's say we work with a company under 200 million revenue, is asking us to do it via API. You then enter the sort of more mid-market, you're seeing more of the API and Swift. And then the larger corporates are slowly coming around to the idea of doing it. So I think the sort of fundamentals is now that we can connect to your banks extremely quickly and extremely easily and very cheaply. And what that's allowing you to do is, as Dave mentioned, is get the real-time visibility, the confirmations, and where the payment processes are. So the sort of operational side of it is now you can more or less plug and play and get your payments going through software very quickly, which then, as again Sarah alluded to, 47%, I think it was on her survey, are looking at security as a vast importance. It always has been important. But I think if you look at what we are now, from 7 months ago, we started this pandemic, everyone was working in the office and you could go to someone's desk or you could go and say, can you wet sign this? What we're now seeing is corporates don't have that virtual infrastructure in place and are really struggling. Those without a system fundamentally have managed to sort of cobble together certain ways of doing it to approve payments through a centralized process. We're seeing those who have a system, potentially not ours, actually ring us and say, can we plug in a workflow tool to get this secure payment workflow into our company as we are now? And I think as we come out of this sort of 6 months since it happened, panic mode, we're now seeing more companies revisit what would have been perhaps a stalled or a not on this agenda calendar year for a TMS to say, look, we have to get with the times as we are moving from a physical infrastructure to our virtual structure. And Dimos and Keith both alluded to, when will this run out? Probably not for a long time. We'll be coming back to the office, but I think these workflows will be important for the forthcoming future. If we go on to my next slide here, what we're looking at, if I press the button, yep, there we go, bingo. What we're looking at here is, well, it's gone too far. We're going back one slide. We're looking at more, I can show, of some of the changes. Now, I've mentioned fraud on the bottom left. This has always been the case. I think something like 78% of all fraud is conducted internally. And especially when you haven't got the controls in place when you're working remotely, it becomes more difficult. Global expansion. We've got other factors coming into this, like FX volatility with Brexit and the US election going on. The ability to go and move money around with what we're looking at. Brian mentioned to FIS's automatic hedging and investment policies. More and more systems are looking at this, but especially around payments, you want to make sure you aren't exposed to certain currencies. And if you can transact on what is invoiced, you don't want to then have the effects of FX fluctuating on the payment. So I think the two most important we're seeing at the moment is the fraud and the physical business disruption, which is really driving that idea of saying you must have a system that can feed from the ERP to then process the payments in whatever format they may be. Obviously, we're seeing more standardization through the API, also through the uptake of Alliance Lite 2 and Swift GPI. We're moving on to the XML formats and moving away from the MT101s. And I think more and more of these banks are also addressing it. At the start of pre-2020 start, we were seeing banks come up with their own ideas. We're seeing 4, 5, 6 year timelines to start producing a payment system or a partial cash management solution. We're now seeing more banks take treasury vendors on board and sell it rather than building it or buying it. We're going to sort of partner. So they integrate these bank portals with TMS portals to power the payments hub, the visibility hub, the forecasting. And that's all this sort of automation and centralization into a treasury management system for your payment flow will also benefit, of course, because you have got automation of processes and less manual errors making these mishaps. Now, I was going to go on to and say, looking at the next sort of early 2000, mid 2000s, and now in future. But I think what's probably more relevant is where we saw life at the start of COVID versus where we are now, and also what we see in the future with regards to payments. As I mentioned at the start of the coronavirus, everyone assumed this would be probably a 3 or 4 month fad, saying we will come out of this by the summer and we will all be well back to business. I think as we moved into sort of April, May, we then realized this wasn't going away. And that's when we saw an uptake or incoming inquiries saying, look, we haven't got an automated payment process. We need to have it in place very quickly. And I think more of the discussions we've had as a business have actually been around actually integrating through API, as it's almost immediate, as long as the vendor has a sort of open infrastructure available from day one. We're also seeing a lot of manual processes around some of the approval and creation of payments. So more and more of the people we're speaking to now are saying, have you got connectivity with all the ERPs? Can you look at, let's say, potentially e-invoicing systems? So we're now creating this open infrastructure now to automate the payment process and move forward. Where it's going in the future, I think, is very exciting. What we're going to see around the payments especially is around the UX and UI. Because we can no longer rely upon a team of 3 or 4 treasurers where all that knowledge resource is coming in, we're going to have to start mitigating that risk. So if someone does go on maternity or paternity leave or someone is off ill, you can't have that knowledge resource sat with 4 people. So what we're looking at doing, I think, is increasing the UX and UI on these systems to allow corporates and their sort of payroll teams and payments teams to be able to pick up the system and go from day one. You don't want 1,000 pages of manuals to do it. You don't want hundreds of training hours you have to pay for. What you want is effectively a plug and play system that anyone from any corporate finance background can pick up a system that looks like either their personal banking or their banking portal and go with it. And the most important thing is what we believe is the idea of democratizing the Treasury space, meaning that you shouldn't be paying over the odds to add a user to the workflow. You shouldn't be jeopardizing your prevention of fraud and internal processes by not having the budget. We've been harking on about this for the last 10 years almost, and slowly, lucky for us, in some instances, this has happened because everyone's now focused saying we must have it, but we haven't got the budget approved. We're now seeing a huge uptake towards the end of this year with people wanting the payments flow. And David, I think I'm cognizant of what time we're on. I think I've got 1 more minute. We might get the last slide to see where we are. But I am curious and I wanted to give everyone time for Q&A. And this is sort of looking at enabling the APIs, enabling digital transformation and some of the factors around it. And you can find this all on our website as well. But in honest mode, I want to give everyone time to ask Q&A. So passing back to you, David, and crack on.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. That was really good. Dimos, do you want to just take over with regard to looking at some of the questions, etc.? How do we?
Absolutely, yeah. Just as a big thank you to all the speakers so far, and really interesting presentations. I appreciate all you sharing your thinking with us. Let's have a look at the polls now, which it should have closed by now. So if the audience can look at the polls, which should appear on your screen, then I will let Keith have a look at the first question. We can't hear you, Keith.
Sorry, I did the same cock up, Tom.
Hey,
I did.
It's a trend here.
Easily
It's
done. Don't give someone my age a mute button.
It's machine learning.
Certainly not human learning. So the question then was, first question was, how has COVID-19 affected your investment plans? So we managed with limited automation, but there were some problems. 50%. Actually, I've been given the polls the wrong way around. Actually, this is the second question, so I'm looking at the first question. So there's on the question that is affected your TMS investment plans. There's been no effect. We're going ahead. 17%. Our plans are on hold. We have too much other work. 25%. Our plans are on hold. Other priorities have caused cuts. Only 8%. We're researching a new system. That's a third of you, 33% researching a new system. And we have no current plans, 17%. So I guess all those that are with no current plans, you've dialed into this session or you've come into this session out of general interest. And there's no reason why not. It's a really interesting session. I don't know, is it possible to have the results on the polls screen, or is it possible for people to see this under the polls tab? Polling results? Yes, if you click on the polling results, you'll see the answers. So over to you, David, on the other question.
Yeah, and just to remind you, the other question, the second question was, how has COVID highlighted the system strengths and weaknesses? And I think there was, 50% have said that you managed with limited automation, but there were some problems. As you could expect, I guess working from home causes some issues in operational processes, 25%, and another quarter really enjoyed the automated TMS, making life a lot easier during COVID and potentially what's to come as well. So I guess no really unexpected results there, but it's good to see that at least people, a lot of you haven't suffered too much with it.
Absolutely.
And, actually, going back to the other question, I'm remembering the Festival for Treasury Transformation, and a very similar question was asked about TMS investment plans. So this is a couple of months back, and A similar question was how has this affected you? And 50% said there's no effect. We're going ahead, and that's down to 17% now. Whereas we have plans are on hold, total of a third, and then a third researching a new system. So actually, that's increased quite a bit because it's less than 30% are our plans are on hold 3 months ago. So it seems a much more pessimistic picture than it was some time ago. Perhaps we can turn it over to our three vendors here. I mean, if we do first Sarah, then Brian, then Tom, what's your view in terms of what you're seeing in the market currently? So first, Sarah.
I'll go first, yeah. Thank you. What's my view on the market right now? Well, I believe that even though there was COVID, I think there was a lot of work going on. Actually, working from home allowed me to reach out more to clients, and I could speak a lot to them. Personally, what I've seen so far is that because of all the risks, they understand also the need for TMS. So we had recently a lot of Treasury Department asking a question about our solution. So therefore, yes, we have been working a lot and advising them and trying to understand what are their requirements, especially in those uncertain times.
Thank you. Brian, if you could quickly comment if you're seeing a lot of activity?
Yes, indeed. From my perspective, we do see a lot of activity from prospect side. So a lot of new joiners who perhaps are currently using Excel, they want to go into the treasury management system and try to use the robustness of a treasury management system, bring them the benefits of that. But more importantly, from my point of view, I think more to the existing customers as well. They do reach out a lot more in terms of providing them with trainings, how they can better use their system, especially in the time of COVID, because they want to fully utilize it and make sure that they get the most out of it. And they have more time to look into it as well, perhaps when they're at home. So that's definitely something that we see after COVID.
That's a fair point. Tom, are you seeing it quite lively still?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we saw things slow down March, April, May. Since June, we've had an uptake, and especially actually August, September, we've actually had the best 2 months we've ever had. I think actually what we're seeing is both what Brian said, the greenfield off Excel customers coming on board to us. But we're also seeing, for example, we just signed a deal with a $39 billion revenue US company to plug in their already existing infrastructure of both a payment system and a TMS to then just do domestic US payments. So we're seeing a sort of new area pop up saying, actually, you have this open light infrastructure. Can you help us with, let's say, the remaining 10% we need immediately? Always yes. So we're seeing growth everywhere, so that's good for us.
Thank you, Tom. So quite lively.
Yeah, so we've got about 2 minutes before the end of the session. So let's take a couple of questions from the audience. There seems to be quite a lot of interest, and understandably, about the effect of COVID on the machine learning and also how the COVID has affected the customers. Perhaps Brian, you can talk about that.
Yep, definitely, certainly. So in terms of from a machine learning point of view, we do see a lot of customers asking for the machine learning capability during COVID because of the fact that they need to do more frequent forecasts. So they need to go perhaps to 6 weeks in the time to manage the forecasting frequency, just because they're quite unpredictable at the time. So we do see more people wanting to use machine learning because the forecast can be generated a bit quicker and a lot more accurate as compared to kind of manual methods. And then more so, we can also combine it, as I mentioned when I was presenting, we can also combine it with kind of scenario analysis as well. So although perhaps your recent data might not be truly reflective of how your future forecast will look like, we do see people combine the scenario analysis capability within a TMS and kind of flexibly defining what they think the market trend is going to be in the next few weeks, and then flexing the forecast in that way as well.
Thank you. I'm afraid we're going to run out of time because we've only got 23 seconds. So unless we're given some extra time, which I doubt that it's possible. All that's left from me to say is that thank you to all our speakers, Sarah from FIS, Brian from Ion, and Thomas from TreasuryXpress. Thank you for all your views. If you want to talk to any of us about any of these issues, you know where we live. Just please come forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks a lot.
you.